We've got a huge set of cloud developer exam questions here. Instead of memorizing them, I think it's more valuable to understand the design logic behind services like Cloud Run, Cloud Functions, and Spanner. Where would you start?
I'd start with Cloud Run, because it appears everywhere in the exam. Practically, Cloud Run is about stateless containers, fast iteration, and delegating infrastructure concerns like scaling and load balancing to Google. Many questions indirectly test whether you understand that Cloud Run scales by revision and traffic, not by instances you manage.
Right, especially those questions about canary releases and traffic splitting. In practice, teams rarely redeploy separate services, they just shift traffic between revisions.
Exactly. And that's why the exam emphasizes revisions. Each revision is immutable, which means config changes like environment variables force a new revision. That's also how you do gradual rollouts without downtime.
What about authentication questions? There are many scenarios involving service accounts, workload identity, and avoiding key files.
That's a core philosophy in GCP. Avoid long-lived secrets. Attaching service accounts to Cloud Run or using workload identity for GKE is the preferred pattern. The exam often tests whether you know that service account keys are a last resort.
I noticed similar patterns in the database questions. For example, Spanner versus Firestore versus Cloud SQL.
Yes, and the key is understanding trade-offs. Spanner shows up when you need global, strong consistency and horizontal scaling. Firestore is more about document access and event-driven systems. Cloud SQL is familiar but limited in scale.
Some questions also test operational thinking, like handling large uploads or background jobs.
Those are practical traps. Uploading large files directly to Cloud Run is a bad idea. Signed URLs to cloud storage are the real-world solution. For background processing, the exam wants you to think in terms of managed services like Cloud Run jobs or pub/sub, not hand-managed VMs.
What about observability? There are multiple services, logging, monitoring, trace, profiler, and it's easy to mix them up.
The exam tests separation of concerns. Logging is for events, monitoring is for metrics, trace is for request latency across services, and profiler is for CPU and memory behavior over time. In real systems, you usually use all four together.
Security also seems to be everywhere. Binary authorization, secret manager, IAM roles, API gateway.
That reflects real production systems. Binary authorization enforces trust in your supply chain. Secret manager externalizes sensitive config. And IAM is about least privilege. The exam rarely asks for obscure details. It asks whether you choose the managed, secure default.
So overall, the exam isn't really about trick questions?
Not really. It's about architectural judgment. If you think like a cloud developer who wants minimal ops, strong security, and managed scalability, most answers become obvious, even without memorization.
That's helpful. It sounds like mastering the mental model of GCP services matters more than grinding questions.
Absolutely. The questions are just different angles, testing the same principles. Serverless first, identity over secrets, managed services over self-managed infrastructure.
One area I think candidates underestimate is CI/CD. Several questions mention cloud build, artifact registry, and binary authorization together. How should people mentally connect these?
Think of it as a supply chain. Cloud build is the factory, artifact registry is the warehouse, and binary authorization is the security guard at the door. In practice, you build once, scan once, sign once, and then enforce trust at deploy time.
That makes sense. The exam also keeps pushing build triggers instead of manual builds.
Exactly. Google wants you to think declaratively. A cloud build trigger tied to a repo reflects how real teams work. Every commit is reproducible, auditable, and automated. Manual cloud builds are fine locally, but not as a system.
Let's talk about pub/sub. There are many questions around ordering, exactly, once delivery, and high throughput.
Pub/sub questions usually test scale intuition. If you see millions of events per second, standard pub/sub fits. If strict ordering per entity matters, ordering keys come in. Exactly. Once is more about billing and deduplication guarantees than business logic.
And ID, impotency still matters even with exactly once delivery, right?
Always. In real systems, retries happen everywhere. Network failures, timeouts, redeployments. That's why the exam often hints at storing processed IDs or using ID impotency keys in Firestore or databases.
I also noticed repeated emphasis on avoiding state in compute services.
Yes, that's foundational. Cloud Run, Cloud Functions, App Engine, they all assume instances are ephemeral. Anything important goes to managed storage, databases, object storage, or caches like memory store.
Speaking of caches, the Redis questions seem straightforward, but what's the deeper idea?
Latency control. Memory store exists so you don't abuse databases for hot paths. In exams and real life, if you see repeated reads with low tolerance for latency, Redis is the hint, even if it adds another component.
What about monitoring signals? Some questions mention CPU metrics triggering scaling.
Those test whether you know what is automatic versus observable. Cloud Run scales based on requests, not CPU directly, but CPU metrics tell you why scaling is happening. Monitoring is for insight, not control loops you manually tune.
There's also a philosophical difference between cloud tasks and pub/sub that shows up in the questions.
Right. Cloud tasks is about control rate limiting, retries, target endpoints. Pub/sub is about fan out and scale. If the problem mentions back pressure or precise retry timing, Cloud tasks is the mental match.
App Engine still appears, even though Cloud Run is more modern.
App Engine questions are mostly about legacy and traffic management concepts, versions, services, and dispatch rules. Google expects you to recognize it, not necessarily prefer it for greenfield designs.
So if someone is preparing seriously for this exam, what should their study strategy look like?
Build mental scenarios. Don't ask, what is Cloud Run? Ask, why would I reject Compute Engine here? The exam rewards architectural instincts more than trivia.
That aligns with real work, too. You don't get points in production for knowing definitions.
Exactly. If you internalize the principles, managed over manual, identity over secrets, stateless over stateful, the correct answers almost pick themselves.
Another pattern I see in the questions is the preference for platform-native solutions instead of third-party tools. Do you think the exam is biased toward ecosystem lock-in?
Not really lock-in. More about operational responsibility. Google Cloud Services exist to reduce cognitive load. The exam assumes that if Google offers a managed primitive, that's usually the right default, unless there's a strong reason otherwise.
So it's about minimizing operational surface area?
Exactly. Every self-managed component adds patching, monitoring, scaling, and security work. The exam constantly rewards designs that externalize that complexity to the platform.
This also shows in storage decisions. For example, choosing signed URLs for uploads instead of proxying data through compute services.
Yes, that's a classic pattern. Data plane goes to storage directly, control plane goes through compute. It reduces cost, latency, and failure domains.
I noticed something similar in API design questions. API gateway, endpoints, apigee. The exam seems to test governance, not just routing.
Correct. API management is about policy enforcement, auth, quotas, logging, versioning. Routing is the smallest part of the problem. That's why these services matter in enterprise architectures.
What about GKE questions? They seem rarer, but when they appear, they're very specific.
GKE is treated as the "you really need control" option. If the problem involves GPUs, custom networking, sidecars, or complex orchestration, Kubernetes appears. Otherwise, Cloud Run usually wins.
So Cloud Run is the default abstraction, and GKE is the escape hatch.
That's a good mental model. Serverless first, containers second, VMs last.
Some questions also test cost awareness, like preemptible VMs versus managed services.
Yes, and the logic is workload shape. Batch jobs with tolerance for failure, right-pointing arrow preemptible or spot. Long-running APIs, right-pointing arrow managed services. Event-driven workloads, right-pointing arrow serverless.
How should candidates think about reliability in these questions?
Reliability equals design, not heroics. Multi-region storage, managed databases, retry semantics, ID impotency, and stateless services. The exam consistently favors systemic reliability over manual recovery.
So the hidden curriculum is really cloud-native thinking.
Yes. Not, how do I run servers on Google Cloud, hey, but how do I design systems assuming servers are disposable?
That also explains why things like configuration management and feature flags show up.
Exactly. Modern systems separate deploy from release. You deploy code, but control behavior with config, flags, and versions. That's mature engineering practice. And the exam reflects that.
If you had to summarize the mindset in one sentence,
Design for change, failure, and scale as defaults, not as exceptions.
that's actually a solid learning framework for studying the exam.
And for building real systems too. If you study the exam as architecture training instead of certification prep, you get much more long-term value.